Hello and welcome to Nerdarchy. For nerds by nerds, I'm Nerd Steve. Today I'm joined by this fine nerd.
Nerdarchy Ted, how you doing in this fine, lovely evening, sir?
I'm doing good, man. I'm ready to get villainous and talk about bad guys and what makes them so bad.
Indeed. So the psychology of a villain is something that, you know, I'm, uh, I don't know how much thought I've really poured into it over the many campaigns that I've run, but lately that is something that I've thought about. Even post creation of Nerdarchy, that is like, well, you don't want to just have a bad guy that's like, well, I'm doing villainy for villain's sake. Like, that doesn't really get you anywhere. Like, if
You,
you really look across media to the villains that stand out, like, they've got stories there and reasons for why they do the things that they do.
wait a minute, you mean there's more than just standing off to the side and twirling your mustache?
Like, the typical things that I've seen over the many years of gaming, of like, the villains want power, or the villains want wealth. And like, even in the D&D movie, when you look at those two options, like, that's what we saw. you
Yeah.
know uh the chick wanted to become a lich and gain more power, and the thief just wanted more wealth, so he was willing to stab everybody in the back. Those were your villains. Now,
I mean, they're
it's great.
classics and they work.
100%. And for a movie, I thought it was fantastic. And I'm not trying to trash the movie.
Mm.
We've already talked, time and time again about how much we enjoyed it. I've watched it, twice in the theater and numerous times thereafter. It's good stuff. But when it comes to, like, to your home game, sometimes you got to do things that is like, all right, let's turn on the waterworks. Let's create a story that makes you sit back and say, wait a minute, are we making the right move here? And that's when you get those cool moments as a GM and as a player, when they have to really second guess, are they on the right side or wrong side or what have you.
I 100% agree. When you can create a villain where your players, as they unravel and kind of start pulling apart the villain's backstory and why they're doing what they're doing, and they start debating amongst themselves whether or not they should be on the villain's side or they should be stopping the villain, you've created a good villain.
100%.
I
So, like, oh, go for it.
I was gonna say, so I just finished up One Piece. My son has been harassing me to watch the live action One Piece, and there are definitely some characters in there that are kind of the bad guys, but like, as you have to go through the whole entire first season to get at like why they're the bad guys, why they do what they're doing, why, what their motives are. And I'm not going to go into it because it's still fairly new. I don't want to give away any spoilers, but it was a really good show. And if you want to see some good examples of why bad guys sometimes do bad things, I think it's a fantastic use of your time.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the live action One Piece. I can't wait for season two. My son and daughter have watched a lot of the animated stuff. My
Mhm.
son, like, he was talking about, being more than 1,000 episodes in, so he very much got it, heavily into it. But I'm like, well, I'm enjoying the live action. I'll stick to pretty much that for now, and maybe I'll get into the animation stuff later.
So
But I very much enjoyed the live action stuff.
I also just watched Blue Eye Samurai on Netflix, which is also really good. So if you want to check that out, less so about the villains' motives and more so about the heroes, where you're like, are they the hero? Are they a good person? And how their judgment can be clouded. But and that's why I think really strong emotions that you can connect to your villains is really great because they're visceral and people can feel them and understand them. Even when they're doing the wrong thing, like they can kind of understand why they might be doing it. And that's where you're going to get those really good villains. Like when you have a villain that's been wronged and they've legitimately have been wronged. Like there's no disputing that. It doesn't justify what they're doing, or why they're doing it, but you can at least understand it. It humanizes them and makes for you know it makes for really memorable villains and sympathetic characters.
And I feel you nailed it there with the question of why. So you can have your villain do whatever it is that you want, but you should always be asking yourself, like, well, what is the reason for this? Why is this happening? Why did they choose to go down this path? And when you begin to kind of walk their story backwards, you can have a lot of fun with it. And just because you've already started your campaign doesn't mean you can't, start filling in these details that the party can find out maybe, sessions or years later, that's like, all right, well, now you're finally coming into this fruition. If you've already laid down these other things, maybe they're false trails. And, you really want to be like, all right, well, there's been some memory modifications done, or doppelgangers, or somebody who's leaving these false trails of villainy behind to cover up the real thing of look, they're just trying to get their long lost love back, who was taken by the god of death. And this whole villainous arc is all about bringing down death so that they can just be with the one person that they actually love in this world. Greatly changes things from, oh, I want to conquer death so that everyone is immortal. You know, those are vastly different tiers, but might have the exact same objective. So you have to, look at what kind of story are you looking to tell, and how deep are you looking to, sink the knife, or wrench those tears.
Even outside of looking at why the villains are doing what they're doing, you can even take like those standard tropes of whether it's power, wealth, whatever the standard kind of like tropes are, but by like making that villain more of a person, even with like very generic, like I just want to rule the city's underworld because for the sake of power. Well, if you start layering in some other details, some other nuance into that character, you can make a more memorable villain, even if their motivation isn't all that interesting, right? Like if they have hobbies, if they have things they care about and love, like Doctor Doom is a really, really good example. Like he has an opportunity to destroy the Fantastic Four, but he doesn't because he would wipe out his art collection, right? He's evil, but he's not a freaking barbarian, for the love of God. So, and also like you can just think of other things to humanize your villains and make them more relatable to your players. And also you can make them really bad to make the players really hate them as well, which is also fun when you can make it personal, and really tug at those heartstrings, or if someone has a personal connection with your players and then they turn out to be the villain, because then you have that extra layer of betrayal on it and it becomes like super personal.
The other angle of looking at psychology is kind of tangential to what Dave is talking about, is as you begin getting into the psychology of who this person is and the decisions that they've made, you are forced to actually begin to work out, well, who this person is. You'll find out, all right, well, what are their hobbies? What are the things that are important to them? Who is their family? Who are they connected to? Do they have somebody that they actually care about and would be willing to make sacrifices for? Are they wholly gone over to the dark side, or are they kind of like in the middle where Anakin was for a while, where it's like, no, I still want to be a good guy, but I've got these things to work with. Where on the Darth Vader arc, is your villain? When you know these kind of things, it allows you to world build, with the villain at the center, and begin your little, circle diagram of extra information and other things that could be, possible plot hooks, or if the players begin, to go down a thing of, well, can we investigate this person? You'll have things for them to find and have, you know, the motives, real or imagined, that are, leading down this path that led them to, their road to villainy.
So Zargon, you know me all too well. Putting a hat on your villain always helps humanize them. It's how I signify to my players that they can talk to this monster. They see the hat and they know we can talk and have a dialogue. No hat, all bets off.
What was the Grell with the hat?
Oh man, what was I don't remember, but I feel like he's referring to Stanley, the
Uh,
beholder. So,
Good
but
old Stanley.
yeah, although that was so long ago, I cannot think of the girl with the hat's name.
Uh, I'm sorry for calling you on it. That was the one. That was the one that comes out to me from our Underdark game. That was
Yeah,
that was a good
although
one.
he didn't really ever do anything villainous towards you guys directly.
Sure, but you
Uh,
could definitely tell that he was not a good guy.
oh yeah, he was shady as fuck, for sure. Uh, Avram says the last Zoo Mafia was pretty fun. Matter of fact, like that was like the Zoo Mafia Blood Moonshine that Steven is running is a great example of just like villains and bad guys layered upon villains and bad guys. Like every time we think we found the guy, like there's another guy behind them, right? Like, well, I will say Barnaby, the very first one we found was just a complete red herring.
Right.
And we're like, this has got to be the guy. And it's like, no, he's just a different a hole, And then we're like, no, this guy is definitely the guy. No, there's another one behind him. So it's like, and then Steven just did like a really good job of like introducing different types of opposition into it.
Yeah, Bobby is really awesome as a GM in that particular game. I'm looking forward to see what he does with the culmination of this story. And I gotta say, I'm a little sad at who we have to go confront. Um, you know, because I totally was not expecting what we got to deal with, and I'm not gonna give it away in case people are not quite
Yeah.
caught up yet. But it's good stuff.
Gentleman Jack, that's it. You got it, Zargon. I was like, you used to put Captain Jack. I'm like, it's not to put Captain Jack, but I'm pretty sure Jack is in there. But yeah,
Wow. Hey,
you know,
Zargon, inspiration for you.
yeah, take one inspiration. But to me, that's like the fun. Like I like creating villains and bad guys that can be reoccurring, right? They're not just going to be one and done. Your players aren't going to just murder them. Like making them real so that the players can interact with them. And and maybe they're not the main villain for the arc they're currently on, but maybe later on. So you've already kind of like personalized it a little bit for them because they've had interactions that weren't hostile.
Well, I mean, even if it's even if they are slightly hostile, the villain that has the ability to have some repartee and get away, that adds fun. Most of the time, like I've done games, the villains are like, all right, I make an appearance, and that's it. Like you fight them and
Uh,
they're done. In my short arc of Curse of Zoltan, I made a villain that was designed to essentially be encountered multiple times. It was a 12 session game with that as the design. You guys created Zoltan and gave all kinds of cool story reasons of what you thought was going on, and then I built upon that. And then I'm like, all right, well, I think it would be cool for you guys to see Zoltan every 4 episodes. So on session 4, you fought his simulacrum, and then on session 8, you fought and killed him, but he didn't really die. You guys actually helped complete the ritual to turn him into a lich. And then, episode or season session 12, dear Lord, is when you had to actually kill him for real. And even then, you guys were fighting other things, and he died at the crux of other things going on. So like I felt I really enjoyed that villainous arc, and it didn't really come across as a win for you guys because it wasn't supposed to. It was meant to be like all right, we had fun. Now we're gonna tap into the second part of the story, and that's when I ran the next game, which went on a lot longer. Uh, so I enjoyed that.
Yeah, I mean that was definitely a lot of fun. Right now in our Under the Dome game, um, kind of like at I want to say like at the halfway point from where we are now, um, a, a villain was introduced, and it was from your backstory, right? And I was like, all right, well, I'll have them meet, and we'll see where it goes from there. I didn't know if the players were going to fight him, and it was just going to be a tough battle, or he was going to get away. Um, but like Ted had his character completely had a reaction that I wasn't expecting from Ted because he usually doesn't play his characters in this way, and was like terrified of this guy.
All right, so my character is a Simic hybrid in a world where we're kind of sort of post-apocalyptic. So we have, you know, genetic body enhancements and mechanical enhancements are things that are part of this game. So being a Simic hybrid, I'm like, all right, my character is essentially was something else. I want to say he was human, but he was modified to become something else. So I made this very evil spellcaster named Vex. And I don't know if he's elven or half elven or what have you, but I described him as from the elbow down, he had, two sets of hands. Don't know why that was the modification that this dude chose to
Don't
do.
worry, you'll find
Uh,
out.
uh, but he was all kinds of weird and wacky. But this dude tortured the hell out of me. My character is straight up said, "Oh, he's killed me many times and brought me back to life." Now, this is what's been told, so it's backstory. I don't know how legitimate it is, or whether it's just this dude trying to f with my head. But at one point in time, the dude up and left, and I'm like, "Yay, I've got my freedom, and I can go off and do other things." So I had no idea what Dave was going to do, if anything, with my backstory. So this dude showed up, and I'm like, I don't want no parts of this guy. So like I was as cordial as possible, and as soon as I could GTFO, that was my plan. And Dave, who knows me as kind of a bit of an aggressive player, and always willing to like, all right, let's fight and see what happens. This character was like, I ain't here for that shit. And so like it threw Dave for a loop, and from that moment, it's like, well, shit, this dude's the boss. This dude is got bigger britches than what I thought. And at that moment, Dave leveled up the bad guy, and he's kind of been a thorn in our side, ever since. And while I wasn't trying to like take the spotlight or create our big bad, I'm like, hey, I had a hand in the story from creating the backstory that Dave felt inspired by, and then further inspired by my player acting like a real person. Uh, so I've been digging it, and so far the players in the game are really enjoying it as well.
Yeah, and it's it's been fun too because at this point I don't even think like you guys are trying to figure out what his motives are, and the only thing I think that he's made real obvious is he just likes messing with your character, and I don't know if this comes through, but he has this like perverse, twisted fondness for your character.
Well, from my character's name is Vel. So from Vel's perspective, well, I'm his creation, so he's played around with me, and maybe he wasn't quite through with me. Maybe there's more he wants to do. Or maybe it's like it's possessive, like, no, you're mine, you really need to belong to me. And maybe somewhere in the middle, but it's a scenario where like he's expecting me to be back in the fold, and I've kind of told him, no, I'm kind of not. So it's got this animosity, and who knows, because there's other
Uh,
things in my story that haven't been touched upon that you know could be linked to the story or not. For all I know.
so our friend Zargon has a question. Most memorable villain you have created or played against? I mean, in that same campaign, it has been fun because I have been kind of introducing this like rogues gallery of villains at all different levels. Like when they first started off, there was like outlaw, rival, motorcycle gangs that could have like been elevated and been a bigger part depending on what they decided to do. So it was fun to kind of come up with them and throw them in there. Your old master, reappearing has been fun. Um, you know, from Kurt's backstory, there's a particular halfling that turned out to be a traitor, and they killed said traitor, but they don't think said traitor is dead. Still, she's been fun to kind of play with them, bring back, and then also completely random. Like all
You're
the
talking about Drift,
players,
aren't you?
yeah, Shadow Drift. Like all the
Drift
players,
Shadow Main.
yeah, Drift Shadow Meme, all the players know that he's a Rashashkin, but the characters don't. And like he's been kind of like a dick to them, but like he seems to be, or at least I've tried to present them as, he does have like a code or rules that he plays by.
He's a
Um,
he's a lawful evil, asshole. The short version is we got a magic item like a Rod of the Pact Keeper or something along those lines that we really couldn't use. So the one barbarian in the party is like, I want to go look for somebody to trade this to, and he made some kind of check and rolled double ones. And Dave's like, oh, you find somebody. And he finds this little hole in the wall shop where there is this what looks to be like a Leonin character that has got all kinds of stuff strewn about their walls, you know, real noble looking type, but he just has this aura of, you know, creep to it. Winds up trading us two cursed magic items for this rod, and everything goes to shit from there. But we've gone back and talked to this guy and a couple of times, I think. I totally love this guy. I want to do more with him. I see this as someone who's going to wind up occurring across multiple games, as if like he himself is a bit of a planar entity, given the fact that Rakshasas are fiends and therefore completely could. I totally dig it, but I'm gonna use them at some point in time. Whatever. I dig them. I love them in every way, shape.
yeah, matter of fact, you guys are currently like you have this plot where you want to make it look like you're working for him in order to make your master jealous or angry, to try and set them apart. So like you're on a quest for him right now.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
We're on a quest for him where we
yeah.
want to betray him, I think, so that he goes and fights back for us, or vice versa. I don't know.
It's a very
It's
convoluted plan, and I don't even think I'm not going to say it's a good plan or a bad plan, but it's definitely a plan.
it is. Well, when we've got three idiots in the party, it makes it a lot easier to come up with stupid
Well,
stuff.
I think I think when the plan was hatched, your character might have still been an idiot.
It's possible, and I went from an 8 to a 19 intelligence because I got a headband of intellect. And it's definitely thrown a lot of perspectives, out there. I was like, well, holy crap! Now it's like, oh, as opposed to this one proficiency, which was a throwaway, it's like, oh no, now I'm really good at that shit. So it's very fun to have your dump stat become now it's amazing. But that's all part and parcel of creating cool villains. Sometimes, you have these interesting dynamics at work. Sometimes characters that you put in are in villains don't necessarily stay as villains. And even though they might become on the party side for a time, they still need to have, that villainous mindset. And, it can lead to backstab and betrayals and all kinds of other fun things that make stories more real and more fun.
So I will say too, like an early on villain that I had created that I never got to see the full fruition of that character develop and be cultivated was from like one of our earliest games. It started in second edition and it moved into third edition,
Mm-hmm.
and that was the evil white necromancer. That they had encountered him, and like he looked nothing. He looked like Fabio, dressed as Gandalf the White instead of what an evil necromancer should look like. Um,
Yeah.
and that was like early on in gaming for me, where I was really trying to explore and twist, some common tropes and kind of
But
play against type.
we only ever saw him like at a distance. We never really got to interact with him, right?
If so, it would have only been like once.
It was one of those things where like, this was a reoccurring character, you know, that as you said, broke the tropes and was very much a, kind of counterpoint to again one of my heroic, characters, because my character was an undead slayer. Back in the early days, there was were they kits?
Yeah.
Um, and that was what my character was looking to do. It's like, oh, I want to just destroy undead. It's an abomination. Again, wrote it into like my character's backstory that there's, the elven queen, is sick and it's all related to an undead plague that's going on. And, my character is off trying to find the cure and destroy undead. And, it's one of my all-time favorite characters that I've ever played. Uh, and just so many great moments with that character interacting with NPCs and other PCs. Like I can still recall, uh, like it was a time when we did some more of the longer intros into gaming, where like, okay, we're gonna get everybody seated properly into this adventure. And I was the last person to join the party, and the party was like going into like, some kind of mine shaft or what have you, and they were like fighting some undead. And like at round two, like I got to then enter into the battlefield, and I just begin describing this, elf like confidently striding from another direction towards the undead, like singing a haunting melody while he's weaving his two weapons around. Like some of the other players at the party weren't sure whether I was, because I hadn't done anything as a player character yet. They weren't certain, like whether I was on their side or not until I started actually attacking the undead. Um, but I, even though like I wasn't a blade singer, like he sang when he went into battle, so it was definitely a lot of fun
Had a bit
to
of that
play
feel
that.
to it. So Zargon, I like mini bosses that emulate all the middle management tropes. That's great. Parks, accidental villain idea, the physically weak town drunk that finds a belt of giant strength ends up accidentally breaking everything he touches from doors to necks. Now, which that kind of leads me to one of the villains. Oh, because you're asking about memorable villains. Um, we had did a blood hunter one shot, and there were three players that each played a different type of blood hunter, and then our friend Ty came in as a cleric. And so like the double whammy for villains here, right? So first of all, when they finally figure out who like the big bad is, and I totally used a trope called the jumped up loser, right? Which is essentially the same thing that gets used in the Icewind Dale trilogy. The master Shinobon is just this total
Yep.
weak-willed loser that comes across the artifact, which makes him uber powerful. Well, same concept. Each one of the blood hunters had encountered this villain before, and he always thought the villain always was naive and always thought he was actually like working with the villains, but it's like, nah, he was actually freed as one of the slaves. He was more like a victim of whatever the monstrous thing that the blood hunter had solved, but he never saw himself that way. So when he came into power, he like arranged this meeting because he felt like, each one of those things was his shot at the big time, and that it was ruined by these blood hunters. So it was, to me, it was just funny, like to go back and describe like different scenes from each of the characters past, and they're like, oh, and like the person was like, because at first no one recognized them. They're like, who are you again? And and like he's like got these ideas of grandeur, and then they're like, okay, well they have the final confrontation, and they defeat him, but then Ty is playing the cleric because, well, you need a cleric, but he was actually a death cleric, and he was after the same item that the rest of the group was, and I think came down to Ty's character and your character at the very end.
Yep. Ty versus me, and I don't know if Ty saw it and said, no, the good guys should really win out, or if Ty just made a mistake. But realistically, if Ty had wanted to win and was willing to play smart, there was no way he could have lost that fight. Because my character was so
Slow.
power gamed crunch that my speed was like stupid slow. So like he could have easily
like
just
you versus zombies would have been a good race.
yeah. I had like a 10 or a 15. It was really bad.
Yeah.
But I hit like a freaking Mack truck. And he kept allowing me to get next to him. And it's like, all right, well, even if you choose to then run, I'm gonna smack you and I'm gonna hit you hard. And it was brutal. But it was a fun scenario, and good prevailed. Now that was something that we have on the channel. That should still be up there, right?
Oh yeah, it is up there on the channel. It's like
So if you guys want to,
probably like Night of the Blood Hunter or something.
so if you guys want to go and check that out, when this is over, you can certainly go find that out. I'm pretty sure it was shortly after Blood Hunter was released to D&D Beyond. But we are now past the halfway point, and I got a laundry list of things to kind of talk about tonight. So do you want to take the standard and I'll do the rest?
Sure. You may have noticed, but Easy Roller Dice is our sponsor for our live stuff for this particular live chat. There is a coupon code down in the description that you can go use to get 25% off your first order. If you haven't used it before, go take advantage of it. They have great products, great dice, and they've always been really good to us, and we love Easy Roller Dice. So go grab some.
All right. So we have our first Sunday of the month. I'm still used to, having this supposed to be on Monday. So I want to naturally gravitate towards the first Monday of the month. But no, Sundays are when we do our live chats. So our giveaway winner is going to be Nick Finn. And Nick, I've got a copy of Planescape, the planar guide, Sigil in the Outlands, Turn of Fortune's Wheel, and the GM screen, all still wrapped in the ye old plastic. I will get an email out to you, get your address, and get this wonderful box set shipped out to you. But there's also my month to run the fan game. So I look at the calendar. So the Sunday the 25th is when I'm going to be running that. And I'll send out the list or I'll send out the email, and we'll let those people who are willing play, whether you want me to run a Zoo Mafia one shot or a D&D one shot, whatever the majority is. But those people selected is Austin Stratton, Brian Smith, Christopher Newen, Dwayne Bennett, Jim Ross, Matthew Webster, Matt, insert no last name here, Norman McCormick, King Troy II, and William Johnson. So I will get an email sent to those people as well. Way we typically do it, it's usually the first 5 people that can respond and and be able to play are the ones selected. There have been times where we've allowed some extras and what have you, but that's that. But my admin stuff is not through yet. The wonderful people over at Critical Role have given us a copy of Candela Obscura to add to our giveaway pile. Obviously, if you're fans of Critical Role, you know that they've got, their own rule set that they've made following all of the wonderful OGL conversations. This is, now to add into, the giveaway pile. So it's some lucky time. This is going to be heading out to one of our lucky fans.
Wonderful OGL conversations. That is definitely a way to put it.
that is a way to put it. Yes, but that is not the only things going into the giveaway pile, and it is too big for me to lift all of it up. But I recently had a conversation with a minis company called Wildspire, and they've got a whole bunch of different mini packs that are over on Amazon and the like. And they recently sent me a handful of sets for our giveaways. They come in these little boxes, but beyond having a bunch of unpainted minis, each one comes with a little booklet that has the stats to use the individual monsters with artworks that you can use it as a painting guide. But you've got these handy dandy things, and there's a QR code on the back you can then scan and get the PDF of the same thing if you don't want to use the little flimsy book. But I've got 5 sets of the spell blades and enchanted objects, as well as 5 sets of the monsters of Solan. So all told, let's see here. This one has 36 minis, and this one has 68. So we're gonna probably lump, the 2 sets together. So 36 and 68. It's a little over 100 minis to 5 different people that all because Wildspire minis are an awesome company. And from what I'm told, they're actually fans of the channel or have watched us in the past. So I told them to be on the lookout for this particular mention. And the last thing, this was sent in. It's mine to keep, but I'm here to show it off at CZYY. They made this cool leather light GM screen that says "Roll for Initiative," and inside has some inserts, like so you can slide whatever pages you want on your GM screen. It's got a dragon on one panel and Roll for Initiative on the other, and it comes with a nice cloth Velcro case that you can slide your GM screen in and keep it safe for travel. But I think it's fun and it's fancy, and to have your GM screen covered. So I'll be sharing that around on the website as well as on Facebook. So be on the lookout for that as well. So thank you to Wildspire and thank you to CZYY.
So did it already? I see that has the inserts, so you put your own stuff in there. But it looks like it came with stuff already in there as well.
Yes, this one did come with 4 inserts that you could choose to use or not. The ones that are in here, like it's got the different weapon types and rules for ammunition, finesse, heavy, light, loading, silvered, thrown, two-handed, versatile. It's got all the different conditions. It's got the travel rules, exhaustion, traveling with stealth, different services that are available, the different weapon types and their damage, the different action types, the different movement types, spell casting with attack spells, cantrips, combined spells, concentration. It's got, different things in regards to ability scores. It's got some things with random encounters with locations. Uh, it's even got things for like resistance versus vulnerability. Uh, you know, the rules for death saving throw, the times for doffing and donning, types of armor.
So there's a
So
bunch of useful stuff in there already.
yeah, lots of stuff that you'd standardly see on your GM screen, but some things that aren't usually there as well. So it's the fun thing about when you've got the ability to customize. You can use the cards that you like the most, or create the ones that have your setting information that you want to be able to use. So that's why I wanted to show that one off, because you've got all of the fun aspects of it's a beautiful GM screen, and you can customize the inside, to completely be your liking.
So Dargon had a great question. Have you ever borrowed a villain directly from a movie or animated cameo in a session? Our group is like notorious from this. In every incarnation of our gaming group, whether it's us or other GMs, have always done this. I definitely remember way back when there was a kid that played us with us. We called him Psycho. He was like 5'2" and joined the Marines. Probably weighed about 50 pounds, soaking wet. So, he totally did a session based off of when wild animals attack. I don't know if you guys remember that series. It used to be like, they used to come on VHS video, tapes you could buy of them. I've personally turned Christine into a Halloween session from
Yep.
Stephen King with a haunted wagon. I
Yep.
totally did for St. Patty's Day, did a leprechaun session where like the players are going through the whole thing, and then they realize, wait a minute, everyone that comes in contact with this gold coin is getting murdered horribly, and they're like, Dave, you motherfucker. When they realized that I just ripped off the leprechaun, and the final leprechaun they had to fight was probably a mishmash of different fake creatures. I know I definitely used the Korit. That's the one that does stuff with the hair, and
Yep.
some other things to throw in there. So yeah, we love doing that kind of stuff.
So I love taking inspiration from, but I don't know if I've ever directly stolen, like I'm using this character 100% as is. Um, I mean, it's possible given, 30 years of, running adventures. But usually I like to be like, all right, how does this inspire me as a GM or as a storyteller to, create something off of? I know that like spiders are creepy, and like I've used spider dragons, but never a Spider Man. When I did use Spider Man, I was playing a modern game, and there was a person who was obsessed with Spider-Man and wound up making a pact with like a dark entity for him to become a Spider-Man. And instead of being like Peter Parker,
It was more like Man
his
Spider.
hero, it was more like, the man bat version from the Batman stories, where like
Don't worry, there's a
became a
Spider-Man version as well of the Man Spider. There's a Man Spider.
Okay, well, I was more familiar with, Man Bat, but he was a horrific, creation that the players had to like deal with, and try to like talk him down and figure out how to fix the problem. Uh, you know, but I mean that tends to be where I enjoy going, is to just be a little bit left of, or a little bit more to the right of who the person is, rather than just a direct lift. But I mean, even like the things that Dave has talked about where he's stolen, like, yeah, you use Christine, but it's not like, I don't think you're like, oh well, it was a cherry red wagon and blah blah blah. Like, you know,
Yeah.
it was still
Listen,
enough of a fantasy version that
don't
was
put
a
it
lot of
past me. I
fun.
would totally do the cherry red wagon. I have no shame in my game when it comes to that stuff. I think it's hilarious. And my favorite part is when the players figure it out, because most of the time they're annoyed with you as the DM, but they also find it really funny.
Well,
I'm never trying to really hide it.
to me the worst part about that was
Mm.
we ran that one after like a local convention where we invited two Nerdarchy fans that happened to be at the convention back here, and we played the game, and it was four players and you running, and when we killed it, the thing exploded and two of us died. Like beyond, like did enough damage that it took us to like instant death. And it's like, all right, well, two characters survive.
Z- Zargon, you've been hanging out with us way too long. Speaking of killer cars, didn't Ted make a car trunk mimic for a LARP or Halloween?
I totally did that. Did that get shared on our Facebook page or in one of our posts or something? Uh,
Probably, yeah. It was
couple
probably
of
on
couple of
Facebook.
Halloweens ago, we did a trunk or treat with my son's scout troop, and I totally made a Halloween costume for my vehicle at the time. Sadly, my that vehicle is no more. That was a lot of wasted money, unfortunately. But I designed a whole black interior to kind of hide uh the seats, and then my son sat inside, and I built like actual foam tongue for the mimic so it could hang out past the end of the trunk. I made teeth to go along the top and the bottom of the car, and then I just scattered a whole bunch of eyes and stuff around as well. So then you put the loose candy inside behind the teeth, but the tongue was on a pole that my son was inside hiding behind the black curtain. So when kids would come up, and I or my wife would be like, okay, feel free to get some candy, that was the signal, as they're reaching in for my son to like move the tongue and freak the kids out. I had so much fun, making that, thing. And I love mimics, so I thought it was just an absolute blast. And everybody had fun with it. Any kids that were too young and were too scared, like, we would just give them the candy without them having to reach in. But yeah, the we had a lot of, jumps, and my son absolutely dug it.
Yeah, good times, good times. That reminds me, when I ran the Mutants and Masterminds game for you guys, I also imported a lot of like pop culture figures into that game. Like I turned Mr. T into an Incredible Hulk style character.
I remember that one.
I used Bubbles, the chimpanzee from Michael Jackson.
Yes, you did.
If that game had continued, eventually I was going to make Michael Jackson like some kind of like zombie lord or something.
Yep,
Uh,
that's what you had said.
and like this is not political in any way. This is pre 2016 by a lot. But I was also going to use Donald Trump and make him his hair a symbiote of some sort. That was controlling him. So besides, like billionaires always make good evil guys. Uh,
Billionaires make good evil villains. That is entirely true.
so yeah, like the modern games are a lot of fun for importing that kind of stuff into.
I would completely agree. I know at some point in time, we are looking to run a Mutants and Masterminds game that I've begun, putting some work into with one of our home tables. Uh, and I'm
Mm.
told they're looking to do more of a tick style,
I mean, one of the
arc.
players is basically they said they want to play Larry the Lobster Boy. Although if you think about it, a lobster would make a badass superhero. I mean, they breathe underwater. They've got a lot of armor. They live forever. They got nasty claws. They look like aliens.
They taste delicious. Oh wait,
They do taste delicious. Well, that's why like lemon and butter is going to be like their kryptonite. Uh, what about
wait.
Walmart?
Well, just
I think you did use Walmart in one of your games, right? Didn't we have to do something on Walmart?
when I ran the
Or
Dresden
am I
Files
just
game,
thinking of just a straight up butcher game or a
I'm fairly
butcher?
certain that when I ran the Dresden Files game, that there was at least one or more trips to Walmart involved.
Oh wait a minute,
Um,
because didn't we fight like the uh the electronic section?
you might have.
Like it was a golem made of like TVs and electronics,
That does sound like something I would do.
which is something I kind of remember.
I love golems. They're definitely in my top five. And when you can golemize just about anything, um, it's so easy to do. I've actually got a couple of golems that are in the brain space now that I'm working on. Uh, every so often, I reach out to my kids and be like, "Hey, let's make something together." And even though it's now a month past uh, Christmas time, I was talking to them about like, all right, if we could make something, what would it be? You know, my son was kind of along the same lines of me, of like, let's make a golem. I'm like, all right, there's already a lot of golems, but what do you got? So like we started workshopping some things, and this is probably going to get turned into a blog post, but the golem that we have in mind very much could be like you know can be created to be used for each tier of play, and can be used from a lot of different perspectives. So I'm looking forward to getting it out there, but I'm not going to say anymore.
So, parks are any subjects off limits to your villains, or do you base it around the players at the table? I would say around the players at the table. Like, our none of our groups have ever been okay with like sexual violence or anything like that. So that's always a given for off the table for us. It's just icky.
Yep.
And then like certain players don't like violence to children. Certain players don't like to see dogs harmed, so like whatever that happens to be. Had a player that's like for religious reasons they didn't want to see any harm to cows, so I had to, so really, which was fun, was kind of interesting because it like led me to creating kind of like a minotaur based off of an iguana, essentially. Because I'm like, well, does that mean minotaurs are off limits too? So I was like, well, I'm not even gonna worry about it. But it did inspire me to make like a new monster. So I don't really see these things as limitations on my games. They're just challenges to overcome.
Well, I mean, and that's the thing about like, I know we're talking psychology here, but communication is always key when you're dealing with your players. And if somebody says, well, I don't like this, or I'm not happy or comfortable with this in the game, then you do as Dave did, and say, all right, this is a challenge to overcome. How can I do what I want and still make my players, my friends, happy with the story? Um, and the one player who's like, I don't like violence with dogs, but if they're gonna play Zoo Mafia, how does that work? Like, can I fight wolves? Can I do? It's like, oh, like it's okay if they are the monster, but the good dog, like the family pet, that can't come to harm. Okay, sure, that's a whole different scenario. So like once you understand the specifics of players' limitations, then you've got the ability to say, all right, I'm able to work with this, and I can move on. Um, and as Dave says, some things are like, no, I don't want to do those things, let alone, put my, players saying, oh, I'm okay with it, or I'm against it. So Like, all right, I've seen some checklists out there that are like, well, the wording on this is weird. So like if you're using any kind of session zero checklist, just be aware of what's there, because some of them I've literally seen where it's like the only thing is either, you know, don't bring it, or, fade to black, or oh absolutely I'm 100% in on it, I want to see it in the game. It's like, where's the, I'd rather not see it. Like it should be like a spectrum of 5, not a spectrum of 3. So I don't know.
So let's see. Jay Harmless, do you guys have zero interest in ever playing an OSR 3.5 game? Do you feel like you don't enjoy the mechanics anymore versus 5e? Well, for one, we've actually played several OSR games on the channel. Like we've done a bunch of Vast Grim, which is a Morkborg hack, which is an OSR style game. We've played Morkborg on the channel as well. Um, so we played all kinds of scopes of games. Now, I don't think like 3.5 and OSR, they don't even belong in the same category. Like OSR generally is, part of me, is a stripped down version of most D&D, right? So
Right.
so therefore I don't even, feel like that's really an actual comparison. But 3.5 games, not as much. Like I played Starfinder, which apparently they're already doing a second edition of. That was fast. We've played some Pathfinder, but yeah, we just don't enjoy those as much. Now I feel like Pathfinder 2e is really a better step in the direction away from 3.5. A lot of the changes are a lot more interesting mechanically than I find 3.5 to be at this point. But even still, like I think there's like 30 some conditions or something, and so there's a lot going on there. And I think at this point in the game, for me anyway, I just enjoy rules light style games. I like to get in, be able to play. I don't want to feel like I have to study for an exam to have fun with my friends.
I'll play, anything if the people I'm playing with, and if the people I'm playing with are my friends, and I'm looking forward to spend the time with them, and the story that we're all telling together is fun and appealing. But if I have a choice in the rule set, I want it to be something that I'm, passionate about, or interested in. And there are plenty of fantasy based RPGs that I have played and enjoyed. Uh, Shadow of the Demon Lord, while it's not quite fantasy, it's close. I really enjoyed the rule set there. Uh,
Well, it's
you
still
know,
fantasy. I mean, it's a little more grim dark, but it's still
right.
fantasy.
Um, you know, I've played Quest, and that rule set is very easy to adopt in a variety of different directions. I've played some Pathfinder and what have you, but like index card RPG, or the Easy D6 system, where like you can play a variety of different styles of games. They're while they have, some of them have some crunch aspect to it, they've got some rules light aspects to it as well, and I feel like you can do a lot with them without needing all this extra stuff. And I would much rather go in any of those directions before I would go into a 3.5 or a Pathfinder direction,
Yeah.
just because like there's there's just not the appeal there. And I've played countless hours of 3.5, over the mainstay where that was our game.
Yeah, I completely forgot about Shadow of the Demon Lord, which occupies a really weird space where it is far more complex than a lot of the OSR games. But I think the way they progress that game makes it a lot easier to pick up and learn as you go. But it's definitely not, Pathfinder or 3.5
Right.
for sure. I've played Deathbringer, which was a lot of fun, which is a stripped down 5e game.
And then I've supported the the more fantasy version of Demon Lord of Shadow of the Weird Wizard, which at this point in time just kind of waiting for the Kickstarter on that one.
Yeah, I don't remember if I supported that one or not. Um, let's see. MI 982 982. Have you ever played any of the Warhammer 40K editions? I played Wrath and Glory. I played a session of Wrath and Glory, and that one uses a bunch of D6s, and that was kind of fun.
The tabletop RPG, no. The miniature war games, I've played, quite a bit of the GW stuff. To me, Necromunda was where it was at, but that's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah. So we are at the 9 o'clock hour, but we're going to be back here Tuesday night. So if you want to come hang out with us for our season finale of Blood Moonshine for Zoo Mafia, please do. And until next time, stay nerdy.
Stay nerdy.